Can I first of all, as a competitor, and of course Padraig McManus was my previous boss, wish Padraig the very best actually when he leaves ESB in a matter of months. He's done a fantastic job in ESB over the years. I didn't happen to be alive for Padraig, but we are meeting in a football match in Athlone between Bord Gais and ESB on the 4th of November, and all of my interns are inter-county footballers. Can I also acknowledge all the suppliers that, and the bankers and everybody else that we deal with in Bord Gais here as well. Apologies for this, but you might know that I had a bit of an information security problem a couple of years ago, which created a bit of a stir. I know some people from the media are here, just to prove effectively that there are restrictions now essentially on what I can do in terms of exporting slides. So. Apologies for this, but I need to have it up on both, actually. Apologies for this. Or I can speak looking... That's it, thank you. Perfect, thanks very much indeed. Well, the whole theme of what I'm going to talk about is actually about a transforming, apologies for this, not a transforming business. As you know, we're a supplier of gas, electricity and home services to over 1 million retail and business customers. We're a generator of electricity using traditional combined cycle gas turbine technology, and acknowledge Neil O'Carroll, who facilitated Bord Gais moving into Whitegate. Thanks to you, Neil, for helping us along the way. Renewables, wind, biomass, marine and tidal. We're a transmission and distribution operator for gas in Ireland. We have an all-Ireland presence, an all-island presence that is, and we're a commercial and a profitable semi-state company just like ESB. And of course there's a lot of discussion, I've no doubt, between the Troika and the departments at this particular point in time as to the future of both companies. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Our infrastructure, you can see, we're not just a gas operator, as I said, we're into fibre networks as well, 445 megawatts of CCGT, 219 megawatts of wind farms, and we're currently doing a seismic study in Northern Ireland for gas storage for security of supply. These are the three pillars of our strategy. Dual fuel offering to over 1 million customers. We're the first to offer dual fuel to customers, best-in-class customer service, developing a balance sheet, outperforming regulatory targets. All of those were absolutely key. And the transformation in the business is one where we're moving from a networks business to one where we have wind assets and Whitegate as well. This year, we're going to spend 2.5 times more on wind assets than we're actually going to spend on gas pipelines. You actually won't find a gas utility in Europe doing that at this point in time. So what are the main challenges? Energy affordability is a massive challenge for us in growing customer debt. And we look at this in the context of a marketplace, community, environment and workplace. Energy affordability. As you can see, the gas price on the right-hand side has moved quite a lot. We've just announced a 22% price increase. Some of the suppliers here present have done exactly the same thing. And overnight, we've seen in the press, mortgage arrears being a massive issue. We're now dealing with a middle-class recession. The areas where we have a problem are not in the traditional working-class areas in the country. They're in the leak slips. They're in the Lucans. They're in the new suburban areas of Dublin and Cork, where middle-class people, lower and medium middle-class people, fundamentally have lost their jobs. We have a skilled unemployment issue in this country for the very first time. So it's actually unprecedented. And we have rising wholesale prices. And why are they rising? They're not rising because of Europe, by the way, because Europe clearly has a number of issues. It's rising because of China. It's rising because of India, Brazil, etc. They're driving the world economy at this particular point in time, and they're driving the demand effectively for fossil fuels. So we're increasing prices in a time of increasing customer debt, and clearly when we have a period of severe weather demand. I know Padraig and myself and others are looking into the future at the moment in terms of what type of weather we're going to have in November. There are expectations that we might have a long, high-pressure, low-temperature spell again heading towards the Christmas time. I know that's not necessarily good news for all of you, but it's certainly not good news for those who actually are in debt going into the winter time. In terms of customer debt, 132,700 customers have arrears with us. That's phenomenal. 16% of our customer base owe us €270 in gas and electricity, and I would assume that there are similar numbers effectively in ESB and in electricity as well. Greater than 60,000 payment plans established in 2011. Jim Costello is here. Jim actually has provided us with people in Clonakilty and SWS. When I came in, we had 12 people dealing with credit control in 2007. I now have over 90 dealing with credit control. It is an industry. In fact, actually, the total permanent employment in Bord Gais is 900. So 10% of people on a permanent basis are effectively dealing every day with customers' problems. That is a malaise of our day. That is the biggest issue that we in utilities are facing. And to be fair, all of us, ESB, electricity and ourselves, are actually trying to deal with this in exactly the same way. We've put in 13,000 hardship cases free of charge, pay-as-you-go meters. In 2008, I commissioned a report by CEPA to look at financial hardship because I knew that things were going to turn. And I've been lobbying. It took me 2 years to get the people in particular positions to actually move to a situation whereby they would acknowledge that there needs to be a social issue, a social dividend effectively for those who actually are in debt. So debt blocking. And by the way, utilities are not just saying this, that we need to have debt blocking. We have people out there who actually have 3 bills in arrears with electricity, with the ASB and ourselves. Why? Because there are no restrictions effectively on moving from supplier to supplier. When I worked in Britain with all of the suppliers, within a year of deregulation, they actually had put in industrial acceptable standards in terms of debt blocking. We don't have that in Ireland now, and that issue is actually raising its head as a major issue for us. Debt flagging is there, but that's not good enough. We need to have debt blocking. John Monaghan and Michael Cullity absolutely agree with the perspective that we have in terms of actually making sure that people are not tempted to be promiscuous with utility supplier debt. Pardon for using the term, but that's exactly the term that was used in Britain at that time. So what are we doing? We're putting in pay-as-you-go meters free of charge. And it's interesting, the people that we're putting it in are 3-bedroom semi-Ds, as I say, in the Lukens and Leixlips and Blanchardstowns. And actually, by the way, sometimes in behind the gates, electronic gates of Montenotte and Foxrock. It is an absolute malaise of our time. We have a moratorium on disconnections, and I assume that Padraig and myself and others will agree that we will put in the moratorium effectively once we see temperatures going down below a certain level. That will be repeated, I can certainly say on behalf of Bord Gais, that will be repeated this year until the temperatures rise coming out of January. It is a must. We must have absolute empathy for the nation in its current position, and as a result we must have those policies. We have a vulnerable customers register. The fear that I have, by the way, over and above a gas explosion, and I always touch wood when I say that, because something could happen, which is not outside of our control, is the idea of that an old woman who is not on a vulnerable customers register is pulled out on a stretcher because for some reason we or somebody else has actually disconnected effectively their utility. That is not an issue in this particular sector in this country, and thankfully the industry has actually addressed that to our satisfaction so we can sleep easy. We're trying to improve energy efficiency, which is part of the demand side of the climate change conundrum, but when you actually reduce their demand, you actually also reduce the cost. We put in a Bord Gais Energy Index, and we've put considerable resources into managing customer debt, as I said. We've also set up a foundation. Over the last year, we put €3.2 million into corporate giving, 1 million of it into St Vincent de Paul. And we will do exactly the same thing again, by the way, because I know the press say, well, why can't you actually forego dividends? Well, the reality is if we forego dividends, we won't be able to create jobs in wind farms, etc., across the country. So we put $1 million to St Vincent de Paul and 200,000 into a loan last year alone to deal with the 1 in 50 winter. Our foundation is staff-run. Over the last number of years, I set that up. NTR had a foundation when I was there with Jim Barry. We now actually support Age and Opportunity, Sophia Housing. With Business and Community, we had a fantastic reading pilot in Cork in a primary school for disadvantaged areas. Camp, Brado, Gogurkirky and Wellsprings. So the budget is $250,000 per annum, and applications are open for the 2012 cycle for partnering at this time. And you can see the types of events, and the volunteering aspect is outstanding. I had graduates in with me recently. I said, what was the most enjoyable thing of your first 6-month rotation? Helping the kids in primary school to read. It wasn't about the professional Maybe it says to me something about what's happening in Bord Gais, that actually they actually enjoyed volunteering more actually than the professional development that we were actually giving them. But that was the one thing that they pointed out to me as young graduates, that actually having the opportunity to volunteer with people was absolutely a must. So in the marketplace, pay-as-you-go meters are absolutely a requirement. Moratoria, vulnerable customers in the marketplace, resources like Jim's resources who are empathetic, to say the least, and well trained in terms of dealing with customers. And there is an issue of pride attached to people. This is the first time in their history they've never been able to pay a bill. You must be empathetic with those people. It is not appropriate for a supplier to give a notice of disconnection within 45 days. It is not appropriate. It is appropriate in Ireland to do it maybe after 180 days and after about 7 attempts to contact them. And to be honest, we hear a lot about disconnections in the utility sector, but Padraig and myself would attest it is not without effort that we try and contact and actually get people into payment plans or offer them arrears payback effectively through pay-as-you-go meters. The community, working with, say, Vincent de Paul and MABS, is vitally important, and in the environment, quite clearly talking about energy efficiency. I won't rest on how we're seeking to hold on to our customer base, because some people are trying to take it off us at the moment, but we are looking at cost reduction, and we do welcome ESB Electric Ireland back into the marketplace. Excellence in customer service is vitally important. I've just come back yesterday. We were nominated in the top 7 European Customer Service Awards. I met the Taoiseach, would you believe? Actually, this is an interesting story. Met the Taoiseach. He was actually taking the free Heathrow Express between Terminal 1 and Terminal 5, just to make sure the media, anybody from the media knows that the Taoiseach was doing that on his own with an aide. And he said, "Why are you here?" I said, "We're here, hopefully, to pick up a European Customer Service Award." And really, that's about making sure that we don't actually have, and I hope Michael O'Leary is not in the room, that we don't actually operate a Michael O'Leary offering in terms of customer service for utilities. Why? Because utilities are a grudge purchase. You need it as a necessity. Therefore, if you have a problem, the customer service level must be at an exemplary level. Our Net Promoter Scores are up around 34, 35, which are equivalent to John Lewis and Waitrose in the UK. That's vitally important in terms of operating a business like that. It takes money, it takes cost, it takes effort, but that's fundamentally important in terms of giving our customers what they want. Clearly, sponsorship is a massive issue. Our most enjoyable one, over and above the reading with business and community, is actually a Rediscover programme in libraries across the country, pointing out that libraries are available for our children and for our adults, and they have multimedia free of charge available for people. Promoting that is vitally important, as well as promoting quite clearly the sciences as well. So in consolidation terms, we have 1 million dual fuel customers. We don't mind losing a number of them, but we like to gain those who are loyal to us. We try to make sure we have loyalty with them by offering them services that they want. Not what we'd like them to want, what they actually want. And that's vitally important for all of us as a business, to go out there and actually get to the touch points of our customer bases and understand exactly what it is they actually want to view as a business. Because the idea that you can push into the market and ignore the pull of that market is certainly something which is a folly, and is a folly that is actually going to lead to an element of disaster. And that's why, by the way, when we did choose Lucy Kennedy, there were plenty of focus groups to choose Lucy. There were 2 or 3 other comedians effectively in the mix, and she was seen as the girl next door. Of course, she's moved on to bigger and better things on a Saturday morning now. In terms of climate change, we have 40% electricity targets by 2020, 12% heating targets by 2020, and 10% renewable fuels by transport in 2020. We are a very, very long way from those targets. We are at grave risk as an economy of actually paying fines at the end of this decade. That is without doubt. There are difficulties. There are very few players, just like ESB and ourselves, who can actually finance at this time. The small player can't finance wind farms because there's an issue of credibility. The demand side we really haven't attacked. As business people, we really haven't attacked what we can do around our offices, what we can do around our installations to reduce our energy demand. And it's strange, actually, that somebody who is in the business of selling and optimising the turnover would say, please use less. Why? Because it is good for the environment. And we have to meet these targets. And can I say the work that Tina and the team are doing in terms of the Corporate Leaders Group and Terence and others is absolutely fantastic, because we are lobbying on behalf of all of you to actually put this very much on the agenda. And the sooner we have a climate change bill of substance with targets in this country, the better. But those targets must be smart. They must be achievable, realistic and timely. At this point in time, we've done great things with electricity, but we have not really dealt with the issues of transport. Although Bord Gais is pushing electrical vehicles, we're pushing CNG. There's a big CNG conference next month on compressed natural gas. We should convert all our buses and trucks to compressed natural gas, as they have in other countries, because you get 20% of a carbon reduction against petrol and a 12% carbon reduction against diesel when you use compressed natural gas. And if we pump more gas through the actual pipelines, all of you, will actually have a reduced tariff for your gas as a result of the increased loading on those pipelines. That makes economic and it makes sustainable sense that we actually do such a thing. Just one thing I want to hit. A lot of people actually talk about the fact that, and there's a lot of commentary about wind farms are bad, or Michael Walsh is here. I know he was formerly head of the IWA. Michael, you've moved to your grid. Onshore wind, in this chart, by the way, from an asset lifetime cost, is number 2 on the list. So I just want to dispel any particular idea out there that wind farms are bad. In an Irish context, we have the best wind resources in Western Europe, if not in the world, on an onshore basis. It is right and proper that actually we get ESB to actually build out transmission lines and give them deep reinforcement effectively and support the planning process such that wind farms are going to come on board. That is vitally important. Why? Because the marginal cost of electricity as we go forward actually is going to be benefited by the fact that we're actually building these wind farms. Portfolio diversification, you can see in many years gone by, Bord Gais would have shown you where all our pipelines are. That's a strange chart for Bord Gais. That's all our wind farms. The actual fibre network, by the way, is what we've now commissioned to Ennis, and we're going to be very soon connecting into Shannon Airport for the first time in fibre optics, down through Limerick and down into Cork. So there's a brand new ring from Cork through Limerick to Galway, hooking up with all the MANs, metropolitan area networks and fibre optics, bringing more broadband on a spatial strategy to the provinces of the country. At this point in time, again, if you don't mind me saying as President of the Cork Chamber of Commerce, it costs €10,000 per gigabit, effectively, to actually get out of the country to the States from Cork. It costs €3,000 from Dublin. There is a cost differential that has to be addressed by actually having this type of infrastructure in place, and that is exactly why we're doing it. That's the whole concept of New Era, I would hope, in the future, whereby companies such as ourselves, through our own assets, can actually deliver something incremental and beneficial, effectively, to the people of this country. In terms of renewable energy, there's a fantastic opportunity. We released a document on anaerobic digestion. We could actually replace, with our agricultural sources in this country, 7.5% of all of our primary gas demand by actually moving down the route of supporting anaerobic digestion in our agricultural communities. Our agri-food business is going to expand enormously between now and 2020, and in particular between now and 2015. That will produce residues. Those residues can be converted into energy. We need a policy context, clearly with targets on heating and transport, such that we can actually push that forward. There's also issues that we can actually look at in terms of demand side, whether it be BITCI CHP, that's CHP units in your home, but also smart metering. Bord and myself are promoting effectively the idea of smart metering at gas, electricity, and ESB and Bord Gais are working very much hand in hand in trying to deliver that as an option for this country, such that we all collectively can control the energy that we are using on a day-to-day basis. Clearly the issues, and there's been a celebrated case recently of a particular issue in County Offaly, as you well, where we do come across, as a utility, issues with respect to planning on a very regular basis. It is not easy for utilities to provide infrastructure in this country. It is not easy for many people in business in this country to provide infrastructure with the planning type of guidelines that we have. This is something that quite clearly we have communicated to Phil Hogan, the new Minister for the Environment. We need to have a streamlined process and less legalistic process, but yes, people still have the right of objection. But we also need to actually have some understanding that this economy cannot actually sustain the highest cost of infrastructure provision. We do not have that luxury. We may have had that luxury in the context of the Celtic Tiger. We cannot afford that luxury today. But that means that we actually have to go out there and work with people. So quite clearly, from the marketplace, the workplace, the community and in the environment, we are trying our best as a national state company with a state ethic, whilst also actually being profitable. But also understanding that we've only started this process. When I came into the company, we had no wind farms. When I came into the company, we had no foundation. When I came into the company, there was no community engagement. We didn't do electricity. We did a whole number of things, like, for example, pay-as-you-go meters were things that we had from the 1980s, not understanding exactly what our market required. And the truth of the matter is, as businesses, we must not preach. We must start to listen. Thank you very much for listening to me.